Okay. This is a part one of a two-part series that we're doing that is covering the steps of creating a winning electrical estimating bid. So thank you for joining us today, and maybe a little on the shorter side today, so you'll be able to get back to your regular work schedule, unless there's a bunch of questions. So prepare your questions if you have them. And this is on YouTube primarily, and there's a chat off to the right. So if you're logged into YouTube, you can chat there on the right and ask us any questions during the presentation. Looks like we're having a little snafu technology wise. Brian, you unshared your PowerPoint monitor.
How did I do that?
I don't know. But anyways, how can I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Derek De La Quadri. I'm the president of Vision InfoSoft. And
You don't
Brian
see the PowerPoint
Hoffelder,
though?
nope, you're not sharing it. Brian Hoffelder joins us here. I'm sure you've seen him around, whether you've gotten trained by him or you've seen him at a trade show or you've seen some of our videos. I see it now.
Okay.
Yay, there it is. And so he's joining us today. Brian helps us out a lot with all of our training. So if you get training, you're going to be trained by Brian. So be sure to reach out if you need any extra training for your electrical bid manager software, your Epic, or your time and material billing manager, service billing software. So I think Brian's ready now. Would you
Yep.
say so?
I think we're good to go.
All right,
Yeah.
excellent. I'll let you take
Welcome
it over.
everybody here. Yeah, this is a webinar just on the basics of getting set up to do your estimate. I find there's a lot of people that kind of just want some guidelines on what things to do when you're getting prepared to start your bid. So we've prepared this webinar. We kind of debated whether it was better to do one long one or two short ones, and we decided to do two short ones. So this will be a fairly short one here today. So the first step is pretty obvious. You need to review the drawings. These days, most of the time, you're going to be looking at an electronic set of drawings as opposed to the actual printouts. But that just means going through the drawings one page at a time and getting a good look at the project. So this is a typical uh, drawing that I use for a lot of my classes, and it's got a cover page or the first page has the symbols, the uh, abbreviations, and all the terminology. But basically, what this sheet does is has the symbols. So what I typically do is go through here and just get an overview of the symbols. The symbols are always a little bit different. Every engineer has a different way of designating a GFI receptacle versus a double duplex versus a standard duplex receptacle. The one that on this job that's a little bit unique is this S with the M. Now, I normally would assume that's a motor rated switch, but it's actually a manual starter. So what I'm kind of doing here and looking at the drawings is looking at for things that are at least a little bit unusual for the way I normally do things. It does tell us up here on the telephone data that they want an outlet box with a 3/4 inch conduit stub. That's pretty typical. The riser diagram is really a good place to get a good fundamental understanding of the backbone of the job. So I always like to take a couple minutes to look at the riser, the one-line diagram, because it just shows me the whole structure of the electrical system, which in this case, there's a main switchboard here. There's a couple of sub panels. There's a utility company transformer. There's a CT. There's actually a pole in this case. So that's kind of a unique thing. There's a utility company pole that gives us the primary feeder to the transformer. And up here are some important notes about that page. So again, you should review the notes, kind of get an overview of what you're going to need to take off. Um, and we'll just flip through the rest of the pages here real quick. But the idea is just to get your arms around the job, get a good feel for the job, get an idea what the job is. I just looked at a job with a customer before the webinar here today, and the first thing I noticed on the one-line diagram was a generator. So that's something you want to pick up real quick because on this particular job, they didn't even tell you the size. They just said size it to the job. So that means I'm going to need to get some help from somebody to figure out what size and type of generator. You can't just say I need a 60 kW generator. Let me just, again, if there's a roof plan with some mechanical stuff, Now this job has a whole site plan, so that makes it a little more extensive than maybe just your typical job where you're working just inside the building. This has parking lot lighting, it has primary and secondary underground conduits, so it's a pretty comprehensive job. It also has fire alarm. Uh, I would say most of our customers don't install the fire alarm system, but they provide the conduit, the boxes for the fire alarm, and then the fire alarm contractor does the rest of it. But again, we've got a lot of contractors, customers who do the fire alarm, some that just exclude it from the bid altogether.
Hey, Brian, real quick,
Uh-huh.
are you showing something other than the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I think you're sharing only the PowerPoint instead of the monitor. We want to re-share. It's like, dang it, he's talking about a lot of detail here. Like there should be something else on the screen. So it's remember the third
Yeah.
tab on the share. All right.
Now do you see the
Yes.
okay. So the last page here is the panel schedules and the fixture schedule. I'll just go back up real quickly. The first page in this drawing was the symbols.
Mhm.
Typically electrical drawings will have symbols, so it's just a good idea to review those and see what each of the symbols is about. And like I said, again, each engineer may have a different variation of a symbol for a GFI receptacle versus a duplex versus a quad or a double duplex. And then the riser diagram gives you a good understanding of the whole backbone of the job. In this case, there's a main switchboard, there's a couple of panels, there's a utility company transformer, and then one of the notes on this job that's unique is it says the utility company shall furnish and install the pad-mounted transformer. I would say 90% of the time the electrical contractor or the general contractor puts in the pad for the transformer. So in this case, the utility company's doing it. Then we've got a lighting page. Got a big warehouse here, and then you've got a lot of office area. We've got a power drawing. That's where we're going to get our receptacles. This power drawing, there is some mechanical. So there's an air handler unit here, but on the roof plan, we've got the rest of the mechanical, the rooftop units. Then we've got a site drawing again with some lighting. Here's the transformer pad. Here's the pole for the power. There's a pole for telephone. And then there's a fire alarm drawing. Shows the location of all the fire alarm devices. And then there's a fire alarm riser. And then finally, there's the panel schedules and the fixture schedule. Okay, so we've got a pretty good idea what this project is about. It's got a little bit of everything. So I'm trying to get back, Derek, to the PowerPoint. Am I there?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to have a good idea what kind of project it is. Is it a commercial job? Is it an office? Is it a school? Is it a medical office? Just get a good fundamental understanding of what type of job because you want to make it something that you're comfortable with. And I always like to look at the size of the job. Just get a feel for the square footage. On this job I was just bringing up a bit ago, it's about a little more than 10,000 square feet. But just to get a good idea, is this a 10,000 square foot job or a 110,000 square foot job or a 2,000 square foot job? Just the size will give you some indication of what you need to be prepared for in the takeoff. If there's multiple floors, if there's site work, that's the kind of thing you want to be looking at. Another variable maybe people don't look at the beginning is the length of the project. Is this something that needs to be done in 6 weeks, or is it going to be a long-term project of a couple years? Because that's going to affect a lot of the decisions you need to make as far as even whether or not you should bid the job. If you're looking for adding some work right now and it's going to be a short-term project, then you might want to go after it real strong. On the other hand, if you're pretty busy, you may not want to be taking on work in the short term that's going to overload you. So the length of the project is pretty important. I work with customers that do jobs that are 2 weeks, 6 weeks, or 2.5 years. That all factors into their way they approach the job. Okay, so the next step is to review the specs. Now, specs could be, any of the following possibilities. There may be no specs. It may not say anywhere in the drawings, what uh, anything about the specifications for the job. Um, on this little job here that we use for training purposes, there's a page just with the specs. Sometimes if you're bidding a larger job, a municipal job or a larger job, there'll be a whole separate book with the specs. So you need to review the specs. Now, is it possible even on a small job like this to read every line of the specs? Probably not. That would take a long time. So the things I'm looking for in the specs are this. First thing I almost always look for is what kind of wiring method is allowed or required. And a lot of the time it breaks down, can we use MC cable or does it all have to be in conduit? And if it's in conduit, are there any specs on the type of conduit that need to be used? But the wiring method is real important to get a handle on before you start the takeoff, because there's no sense taking it off in conduit if you can do it in MC cable. Now, EBM does have the ability to change it after the fact, but that's always a hassle. It's better to take it off right the first time. So the wiring methods are real important to size up before you start the takeoff. And then there's also usually some type of quality or brand requirements in the specs. Again, on this job, I think it says that the devices are 20 amp. It doesn't say that they have to be any particular grade, so we would just use a standard commercial grade. But again, sometimes they'll say that they need to be hospital grade devices or they need to be premium or industrial grade devices. And those are all the kind of things you want to know as much as possible before you start the takeoff so you don't have to go back and change things after the fact. On this little job we use for training in class, it has heavy duty switches as opposed to general duty. So just a good thing to know before you take it off. And again, on this spec, it says up at the top here that armored cable can be used in the concealed areas in the building. So a job like this, I would take it off. I would take off all the devices and lighting with MC cable, but I would still do the home runs and conduit. And there's a little note over here again on the specs about the minimum conduit size is 3/4 inch. I would still do the home runs in 3/4 inch even if it didn't have that in the spec, but it's just a good thing to know. So the next step in the takeoff is to organize your takeoff. How are you going to take it off? Are you going to do it by system? Take off the feeders, take off the gear, take off the lighting. Um, One of the advantages of using PlanSwift, the electronic takeoff program we integrate with most of our customers, is it organizes the job for you by the takeoff page. So let me just show you a couple of quick examples here. So when you're in the takeoff screens in EBM, and we'll just go to feeders as an example. Up at the top right here, the drawing reference number will be pulled in automatically from the job you're working on. So if the sheet is titled E101, and that's the branch lighting, that's what will be filled in here for the drawing reference automatically. The estimator has to set up the sections and breakdowns. So in this job, I've separated the sections into a common area, a standard room, a suite, and a corridor, and then the site. Again, you can add those and create them on the fly, but you're better off setting them up under the job setup at the beginning here, where it says job settings, and then you have the sections and the breakdowns. Again, I can add these and edit them on the fly, but it's a good idea to have those breakouts organized before you start the takeoff. If there's any alternates, again, you want to have that set up in your takeoff screen here so that when you're taking off your devices or your fixtures, it doesn't matter. In EBM, there's always an option up here to break out the job into different categories. You could have multiple alternates. Let's say there's a second alternate, you just edit it right there and say alternate 2. And then as you do your takeoff, you just move from one breakout to another up on the top right here by just simply clicking and making a choice there. If they want any other breakouts or you want any other breakouts just for your own purposes, like I said, you may want to break it out by floor. You may want to break it out. You may want to separate the building from the site work, even though it's not required in your bid. You may want to do it just for your own benefit. So you want to set that all up before you start the takeoff. So those are just a couple of examples of how you might break out a job by building. Might want to separate the site work from the part of the job that's just inside the building. Again, if there's phases of the project, they might have a first phase and a second phase. You probably want to set that up again in the takeoff. And if there's anything what I call typicals, that's a really good thing to spot before you start the takeoff. So in this little example job I've got here, it's a hotel. So in the sections here, I've got one section for a standard room, another section for a suite. So I'm just going to take off one standard room, and then at the end I can put in a multiplier. If I've got 85 standard rooms or 205 standard rooms, I can just multiply it after I've taken off one. Same thing if there's different types of rooms, like a suite. There might be a handicapped accessibility room, just whatever types of rooms they've got in the project. That might apply really well for a hotel. It might apply good for a retirement home, senior home, even for schools. They often have typical classrooms. So look for those typicals before you start the takeoff. That way you can organize it and input it that way. The other thing you need to size up is what kind of quotes you're going to need. So most jobs, unless the owner is providing the lighting, you're going to need to get a lighting quote. And the same thing for lighting control. Now, a lot of the time, the suppliers will combine the quote for the lighting and the lighting control into one total lump sum, which is fine. But you need to make sure that you're going to get a quote on the lighting and the lighting control. Same thing with switchgear. So those are the two big areas: lighting control, and switchgear that you're going to need to get a quote on for most jobs. So a lot of people like to start the takeoff there because they want to get that information to the supplier so they can start working on getting a price. Same thing with special systems. If you need to get a quote on the fire alarm, if you need to get a quote on a subcontractor for the data, any other parts of the job that you need to get a quote on. Now, I think it's a little bit ironic that most of our customers kind of break their back to get the lighting and gear taken off first, then get it out to the supplier. The ironic part is that the suppliers will typically not release those prices until literally a few minutes before the bid time. So it's kind of, it seems unfair that that you work so hard to get your information to the supplier to get a quote, but they don't release those numbers until right before the bid. So I think that's about it. Have we got any questions, Derek?
No, not yet. Just some greetings, okay, which is fine. I think you covered things in a pretty straightforward manner. Well, there might be some questions maybe about reading some of the specifications or something, but I don't know. We'll see.
Reading the specifications is kind of a challenging thing because, there can be a lot of information, and how do you sift through that? Because even on a small or medium-sized job, you literally, it might be impossible to read every line. So again, what I'm looking for is what kind of wiring method. I want to look through the specs for that. I want to see if there's any specs on the devices, whether they have to be standard commercial grade or they need to be premium or hospital grade or something else. I was helping a customer a couple of weeks ago with a job where they not only required hospital grade devices, but they wanted tamper proof and USB receptacles. So that's not a $2 receptacle. That's a pretty specialized type of receptacle where it's hospital grade, tamper proof, and got a USB outlet or output on it. So I look for wiring method, type of devices, and sometimes even in the switchgear, there's certain brands that are acceptable. They might only allow certain brands of switchgear. So again, you need to make sure that your supplier can provide the brand of gear if it is a requirement of the job.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Brian. No questions at this time.
Okay.
I'd like to just mention and remind people who don't know to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're 7 subscribers away from hitting 2,500. We've been kind of charging to get as many people just to subscribe to our channel as possible. So be sure to hit subscribe on our channel, and you'll get some notifications in your email, some extra ones like when we post a video, and just to keep you kind of abreast of what's going on with our videos that we're creating, because that's where we're putting everything is YouTube. Our EBM help videos are there. There's training webinars that are specific, just training, helping you get started with EBM, or I think we even have an advanced one, and there's another training webinar on our YouTube channel for using Plan Swift with
Yep.
EBM. And I don't know, Brian, did you want to talk a little bit about training?
Yeah, just in case you don't know, we have a lot of training options. We can do one-on-one training with Zoom, where I link up to you on your computer, and we go through any type of training you need, basic, introductory, advanced, any any one-on-one training. We also do classroom web-based training, where you go into a website virtual classroom where you'll be with anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 other companies, and in that, it's called cloud share. In that environment, I can see all of the monitors at one time, so you're all running the program and going through the training just like you would in a physical classroom. We also do classroom training. I don't think we've got any sites coming up, but we will have at least probably a couple more this year. And I also do a lot of on-site training, where I go out to the customer's office for a day or two at a time, and and work directly with you on site. So there's everything from basic 1 or 2 hours online up to on-site training, where we can tackle just about anything that you have. A lot of people also do online training or on-site training where we actually do a takeoff. So it's kind of killing
Mm.
2 birds with 1 stone. We actually take a job that you need to bid, or that you want to rebid, or that you're familiar with, and we'll go through the whole takeoff. And that way you not only get more hands-on training on the program, but you also get a bid produced.
2-for-1 deal.
Yep. I've got a customer I just signed up for next Monday that's got a little project he wants to go through, and we'll you know that he's going to be bidding about a week down the road. So we'll go through his takeoff.
We had a question come in. John asked if we recommend Candel's training, their estimating training, and I just said yes. I've talked a lot with Candel's about their training program, and I know they put a lot of work into it, and there's a ton of detail, a lot of content. I know they moved to more of an on-demand video training for kind of getting started with electrical estimating. And but I also know it includes a community. You join a community once you subscribe to their training, and that you also have some one-on-ones, if I recall correctly, unless they've changed it. I don't know. Would you agree with me, Brian?
Yeah, I think that's the way it works. It's a very comprehensive program. It'll take somebody from square one and goes through all the different aspects of estimating, know, including like the kind of thing we're doing here today, how to prepare yourself to do the bid, and then all the aspects of doing the takeoff, and doing the number crunching, and all that part of the job. So yeah, it's very, very comprehensive.
Yeah, and I see Tim chimed in that he really likes our program, and I would also like to mention that Tim over at Electrical Enlightenment, they offer, I don't know, they offer what would you call it, a whole range of electrical estimating services, and they use our software, Electrical Bid Manager, so you could always get the job from them once done. I mean, they'd be able to tell you more if you look up Electrical Enlightenment on the internet. I'll put their domain here in the chat so that you can look them up. In fact, I think we're going to be doing a joint webinar with them here soon. All right. Thanks, Tim. Let me see. Anything else? Just a reminder, this was part 1, and in part 2, we'll go into some more detail, and you'll be getting an email in the next probably 3 weeks or so about when we're going to do that, so you can register. And I also mentioned we're in talks with doing a webinar with Electrical Enlightenment coming up, trying to mix things up, trying to get back into doing these on a regular basis. We took a little break to start this year, and we're back. So get ready.
In the part 2, we're going to cover things like preparing your proposal, your scope letter, things that you need to consider putting in and putting that whole part of the project together, your proposal, your scope letter. We're also going to talk about evaluating your competition in a bid, not only the number of competitors, but who they are. Same thing with the customer, that, you know, evaluating the people you're bidding to. Have a, you know, look at that part of the bid process. That'll affect you, and that gets into the strategy of how aggressive you want to be in the bid and that kind of thing. So those are a couple of the topics we'll talk about in the part 2.
All right. Also got a shout out from Kyle about your one-on-one training. I know you already went over that and what you offer in the one-on-one training and the.
What was his last name?
It's just Kyle.
Well, I just trained a Kyle this morning, so it must be Kyle. I wonder if that's him.
It might be.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you soon, and look forward to more videos with you. Take care.
Everybody have a good day. Take care now.